The show for today, we're talking to the Chancellor of the Tennessee Board of Regents, Dr. Charles Smith. And of course, Dr. Smith, during this last 6 minutes that we have here, let's give you an opportunity to perhaps talk about the future. We do understand that very soon you're probably leaving the Tennessee Board of Regents and becoming involved in a number of other things. And let's give you an opportunity to talk about some of the things that you'd like to do beyond where you are now, since you've all had an opportunity to be involved in many of these activities.
Dr. Haney, I do plan to retire from the Board of Regents within the next few weeks. It's been a wonderful experience over the last 32 years, being in public higher education and public K through 12 education. I plan upon retirement to take about 30 months. And I'm going to go across the state many times, go into every community in this state, and gauge whether or not I could make a viable race for governor. My reason for that is very simply that I feel like I've got an investment in what has happened in K through 12 in the last several years and in higher education. And as I look out at at those who are being mentioned as possible candidates for governor, I see a lot of good people, but I don't really see anyone who has had a strong background in education, or anyone who I would feel necessarily confident that education would be #1 on the priority list. And I feel like that it's critically important that this state continue what we've started over the last several years. I think one of the things very unusual about the state of Tennessee is that we've had for the last 21 years a continuity, even though we've had 3 different governors. We've had a Republican, Lamar Alexander, then a Democrat, Ned McWhorter, and now Don Sundquist. Republican, Democrat, Republican. And yet each has built on the other's record of achievement. And in fact, I think one of the things that Governor Sundquist has not received the credit he should for is that he has funded most of Governor McWhorter's program, 21st Century Classroom. He had, of the $1 billion more that's been put into K-12 over the last 6 years, he had to find about $700 million of that. And so he could have come in and torn that down and gone with something else. But I think we've got a building block. Something doesn't happen in other states. And if I were fortunate enough to be elected governor, I'd like to build upon what the previous 3 governors have done, and to make their legacy come true, and also to lead forward into the future. And I think education is clearly going to be the most critical need of the 21st century.
I think Governor McWhorter had the reputation of being what is known as an education governor, as
Yes.
did Mr. Alexander.
Yes.
You see, and I think you would like to try to continue that tradition because you believe that education is very important. Very good. You know, looking around at all of the needs that the state of Tennessee might have in many of these areas, do you believe that as an education governor that you could be able to solve some of the problems that we've talked about today?
Well, I would hope so. I think I would bring to the table a keen understanding of the problems, a strong commitment to addressing the issues that will be before us. And I believe that with the technique I plan to use of going into every community and spending hours and hours and hours of listening to the people of Tennessee, I feel confident I can shape an agenda that would, in fact, take us to where we need to be in education in the 21st century.
You've always been involved in that aspect, that is community kind of relationships, even as the Chancellor. I know oftentimes you're in one area or another. Is that part of the activity that you're planning on becoming involved in over the next 30
Well, I
months?
suspect I'm going to be accelerating that a good bit during the next few months, but I'm going to do the best job I can in becoming acquainted with as many people as possible in this state, and then shaping that agenda.
You know, of course, Dr. Smith, I really wouldn't want to raise any questions about some of the other issues, but one of the most important issues that many people talk about that appear on this show is the problem of food taxes on food and whatnot, and that's a very, very significant development. As a matter of fact, we've had about 3 or 4 different shows dealing with the whole issue of taxes on food, and many people would like to see that end. And of course, I think that is one of the things that we would suggest that you certainly if you are successful within that area, we would certainly suggest that you could work with somebody who could deal with that, because I understand that is a real problem.
It is, and I think Governor McWhorter and Governor Sundquist are to be commended for their efforts to try to take sales tax off food, and I believe strongly it should be off food.
Very good. And so we've got a minute and 13 seconds, Dr. Smith, before we end this show for today. Let's have you give you an opportunity to make a final comment.
Well, I want to thank you, Dr. Haney, first of all, for giving me an opportunity to come on this program and to talk about education. And I think that's something that we need more of. I really fear that only in the last 2 or 3 years have we really pushed education to the forefront. And hopefully we can take advantage of the fact that I think people are listening. And I think one of the things you learn in life is that you have to deliver a message when people are listening. If they're not listening, the message is lost. That message is out there now, and I think people are listening, and I'm optimistic about the fact that people will view this more and more as an investment, and we can move forward from that point.
Well, Dr. Smith, let me, over the last 25 seconds that we have here, thank you for coming by and giving us that assessment of higher education in Tennessee, and to point out that while we are not where we want to be, we are not where we were. I think that there is continued progress, and I think that you've demonstrated that kind of progress, not only during your earlier administrations, but certainly the administration that you now control. And of course, let me encourage our audience to tune in again next week for another informative edition of Comments. Thank you, and good morning.